Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's constraints on both the supply and the demand side. Nobody's selling, right?
Yeah.
Because and nobody's buying because I don't know. I just look at some of these mortgage prices. If you're buying a whatever $700,000 home in California and
Oh,
all in it with property tax and insurance, I mean, right, you're paying 5,000 to 6,000 a month. I mean, who's affording that? It's just I don't know.
yes.
That's what I ask myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned something about that kind of with like new generations. I know that's also affecting the construction industry. Can you maybe speak to what you see or what it was like maybe when you owned your construction company with your staff and your laborers and their expectations, their working style, their adoption of technology versus now, right? I think you have a lot of Gen Z entering the workforce. Millennials are entering their 30s, maybe even some like late 30s for some. How has that affected the industry and how do you see it continuing to
Yeah.
affect the industry going forward?
That's like, I think the core of that immediately to me, if we're just talking about the generational changes, is I think of it more of an attitude about information. Their attitudes about information. And what I mean by that, and communication in the modes of communication. So I had two interns that worked for me in my construction company. I got them out of the University of Minnesota. And I have a couple stories with these guys that were different for me. And they're both great employees, very dedicated, super smart, but we'd have conversations and I'd be talking to them and they're immediately on their phone and doing something. At first, I was like, "Are you actually listening to me? Right? Is this what's going on?" But they're both already searching more information, like based on what I was talking about. They're already starting to augment what I'm telling them, and so this was I had to adapt to it. And right, no, actually, they're actually engaged. This is just how they process information and how they go to work on it. And so this was a different thing for me. I had to adapt to. And another thing with these two is that I had a brand new printer sitting in a box, sitting in the office that sat there for a long, 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 long time. And I was like, "You guys, you can use that printer. You just got to open up. It's brand new, right? It's never been used." But and where I'm going with this is their thought of, I don't need to get it on paper. I don't need it on paper because I'm not going to be thinking about it that way, right? And so there's just different things about that. I think some of the difference is, if I think through some of the people we had come through, is how they're thinking about just the work environment, and some of the attitudes is, some of it's okay because it's changing, because maybe I don't want to be so worn out from my day, and I put in so many long hours into this job, and I need some balance, because I think it's important for us all to have balance. And so some of the kind of older attitudes were just go, 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 go till you're worn out, right? And work these super long days. And where I would find it would be interesting is we'd be even offering overtime, so paid time and a half or even double time. And I know this from other contractors I talked to. They had a hard time getting people to want to work the overtime, right? And so there's these little attitudes. Yeah, I don't want to. Some would, and they make really good money for it. But it was just this interest. Really, you don't want to do that. And so there's just this interesting thing, I think, about this balance of, well, no. And some of it could, we could argue or debate it, is that good or bad? I don't know. And it's very localized to that individual in my own experience. But there's some of that. And then I think, and this is kind of big about what we're doing at Built Data stuff, is as we think about um, how do these people learn, and how do they share, and how do they communicate. So if you step back a couple decades and you're, let's say, in construction, you're a laborer out at a job site, you're really stuck in your world there, right? Your world is the job here, things you can see and touch and talk to and do right here physically. Because what would it take? You'd have to drive somewhere or maybe make a phone call to connect with somebody, right? That's not the way it is now. When we have our smartphones, we can ultra connect people that are not in the same geographic spot. The industry, though, in my opinion, has not necessarily done a great job of transforming in those aspects for the younger generation coming in, right? Like, they just have not done a good job. And this is a big part of the challenge of, I think, recruiting people, making it interesting, as people, we spend our lives on our phones, and then well, I don't get to use that. I'm not even on a screen. What, even though it can't always be on the screen when I'm putting physical things together, but there's a happy medium in my idea of things. And so I think these are things that are challenging for the construction industry going through the generational changes they're heavily underway right now, because you kind of have the millennials generations now really in their early careers, maybe starting to hit mid careers. The top performers of those, the high achievers, are really starting to move up the ranks and catch attention. And then you got the ones coming in behind them, right? And then you've got the older ones that are really teed up to retire, and they have all the knowledge, right? They have all this really wonderful knowledge, but how do we transfer that to the new crop that thinks differently about information in a real fundamental level? These are the big challenges I see, and what's quite interesting to us.